Hey, it's Rob for the town of Pinetop-Lakeside here with Talk of the Town. And on today's show, I've got with me from the state of Arizona, the Arizona Department of Housing, which we call ADOH. That's the short and acronym stuff. I've got with me David. How are you, sir?
Fine, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Is it Dave or David?
David's fine.
David, okay. Give us your name and what your title is there with ADOH.
My name is David Bridge. I'm the Special Needs Administrator for the Arizona Department of Housing. One of the most important things, though, relevant to this discussion is we're also the organization that oversees homeless coordination at the state level for the Arizona Balance of State Continuum of Care, which covers the 13 counties that aren't the great states of Maricopa or Pima. So Apache, Navajo, and the other 11, what we would consider, rural or non-urban counties kind of fall under our jurisdiction.
Yeah, so if you see Balance of State or BOS that ever referred to, that's what they're referring to as the other counties other than, I love how you say that, we call it the state of Maricopa.
Yeah, that was one of the first things that taught me taking this job is, never compare to Maricopa because it's such a unique beast within Arizona.
It is. Okay, so we've got a survey that we've put up that we've asked people. We've got it. First of all, there's 3 surveys that are linked up. One is English, one is Spanish, and then the other is for stakeholders. Can you first of all just explain what those are?
Yeah, so basically one of the requirements or one of the big things that ADOH does is we're responsible for the HUD Consolidated Continuum Plan. So every year we're as part of HUD's reporting for the state and for the housing dollars we receive from HUD is we have to provide a consolidated plan, which, and a big part of that is kind of a landscape assessment to show what the issues are going on there across Arizona, to identify, what gaps we might have, to identify what resources we've applied to those gaps. I think there's 2 things I'd like to point out that are really important about this. The first one obviously is this is a HUD, mandatory HUD reporting tool. So, there is, this is one of those things that they look at when they're determining allocations of funding at the federal level. Obviously, it's one of the tools that HUD uses to inform their planning, nationally as well as statewide. So obviously there's a compliance piece and just we want to make sure that we're really making sure that that Arizona's rural communities or non-urban areas are represented in that count. I think the second area, though, that's as important is just for our own local education information. We want to make sure that, we're really understanding what's going on in the rural areas. And, I've been in this serving the Balance of State for, the last, for about 5 years now. And one of the things that I think is sometimes lost is that when we look at some of these housing issues and we see these national numbers or we see what's going on in some of these big cities, and we acknowledge that we have these same issues in our rural areas, but I don't think we always fully understand what the difference is in the rural communities, that we don't have all the resources that we do in the urban areas. We have counties that don't have shelters, don't have some of those other resources that, a community would rely on for addressing homelessness or housing issues. That housing stock looks completely different in our rural areas than it does in our urban areas. There are very few, 400-person apartment complexes in those 13 Balance of State counties as compared to Maricopa. So really, I think the other part that's really important, not just at the federal level, but for our state awareness is, and this is what the survey kind of goes into. It goes into some of those unique areas where there may be challenges we have in the Balance of State that we don't have in our urban core areas.
Okay, so yeah, basically, and then so that's the regular survey. The stakeholder survey, that's for like our elected leaders, people that are in government positions, people that are in healthcare, things like that, right?
Absolutely. And that's another piece with this housing and homelessness issue is I think one of the things that's really come to light in the last, decade or so as these issues around homelessness and housing have raised is that it's not really one agency that can answer all these questions, right? Department of Housing has housing resources. We don't do direct services. And when you really get into, the causes of some of our housing challenges and homelessness in particular, you realize that there's a lot of different stakeholders involved. Local officials have control over zoning. They have control over local dollars. They have control over other local resources that might be helping it. Our faith-based community, in a lot of communities, is our first line of response to some of these issues, and a lot of times aren't receiving federal funds. Just go down the list. Hospitals, healthcare, our fire departments and police departments are sometimes first responders for homeless issues and housing issues. So anyway, I think one of the other part of this and why it's like a stakeholder report, and that's not just limited to, homeless providers or housing providers or subsidy providers, is that we really want to see what are all those, how does the whole community respond? And again, especially in these rural areas where some of those stakeholder groups may not exist that exist in a big city, we want to find out how the community is responding to that. They're still having to do the same things. We still have to make sure, people's basic health needs are met. We still need to make sure people are being fed and that they're accessing some of these wraparound services and case management. So how is that being done in these rural communities that may not have the traditional, kinds of resources that an urban area has? So that's why we really do, like you mentioned, elected officials, faith-based partners, volunteers to nonprofits. All of us are part of that solution, and we want to make sure we get a sense of what their needs are.
Awesome. Now, in regard to the surveys, are they anonymous, or are there sections where people can give their names, or how are they handled?
That's a good question. I've gone through most of the survey, but I haven't gotten to that part. I believe it is anonymous for the, and I think there is a section at the end where you can, identify, what your who you are.
The demographics kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but there is an area in the beginning where you can kind of, it is anonymous, but you can identify, what stakeholder group or what your perspective is. Are you an entity that funds? Are you a volunteer? So there is an opportunity to kind of at least identify what maybe your perspective is on some of these issues.
Okay, cool. And then as we get, as you get the survey results and get them back, last year here in the Pinetop-Lakeside area, we had a big issue with roadways. And what ended up happening was input to the state, direct input. There was letters, it was emails, and it was comments on their commenting page, led to a big change. And they came up, they fixed the roads. They put us, weren't on the plan at all. They put us back on the plan. It put us back on the map. So the more information you get, the better, correct?
Absolutely. That's a great example of transportation that affects all communities. Housing and homelessness in particular is another one. Yeah, we're absolutely where that feedback is read. It is included. It is incorporated, at a number of different levels. One of the really exciting things we have right now going on at the state level, at least around housing and homelessness, because it is a statewide issue, is the governor has seated interagency community council on housing and homelessness. And the core stakeholder groups are, again, back to my point about everybody participating. It has shelters. It has all the government agencies that have housing and homeless type programs involved. Department of Corrections is involved with the release issues. The education system is involved. And so again, when we get data like that and we get direct feedback from a community where we can say these are the needs that they have, we have some avenues now where that information can be shared across state agencies to break down silos, to try to figure out, which agency has the resources that can apply to that specific need. So even though you're responding to a housing survey formally, but when you identify some of these issues, again, I know the survey has questions around healthcare. It has questions around transportation. It has questions around some of those other issues that may be affecting your community or leading to some of these housing and homelessness issues. We have mechanisms now to distribute that and make sure that, the right entities are responding to it and working together with those entities to come up with solutions. So again, back to that it takes a community or it takes a village. That applies to us at the state level too. So again, that data is absolutely used as you described to allocate resources and to try to bring resources to bear to communities, as well as other things besides dollars, right? It could be TA, it could be it could be new programs, it could be a lot of different ways we can respond.
Yeah, so that led to my basically answered the last question, which was what do you do with the information? And it's basically the more information you get, the more you're able to benefit or help the area. So if we want to be able to get resources, we want to be able to be known or have attention. Everybody's always like, well, they don't pay attention to us. This is the way to get paid attention to, correct?
Yep, it's just one of the many ways, yeah, that you can have a voice in this process. I've been with state government now for 4 or 5 years, and I'll say absolutely that when we get these types of not just the reports, but you alluded earlier about phone calls and about reaching out to your legislators and all those types of things. Those messages do get to us, and again, whether it's in a formal mechanism like this through a survey or through comments or public hearings or things that you can attend. That does get to us. And I think, one of the reasons why it's really important for Apache Navajo, just to reiterate, Phoenix is the state capital. It's the county seat. It's the largest city in the state. Mm-hmm. Local people here have no problem finding their local, getting to the governor, they're here. They're all in our backyard. Again, to your point about not being heard in the rural areas, a lot of times, unless an official or somebody comes out to that community specifically, they don't get that face time. And so it is important to use those other avenues that are available to make sure you get that message heard. Again, calling your local officials, calling your local representatives, taking advantage of surveys, any way you can to get that message to us so we know what that need is. We really appreciate. It's not, a lot of times it's just, what's in front of you gets done. And sometimes if it's not in front of you, we don't see it right away.
Awesome. So once again, David, really appreciate your time today, helping explain why people should participate in this, the ease that it is. We'll have the links down below again. You just click on them and can go straight through. As I said, the original, the regular one has it in Spanish, and then there's the stakeholder one as well. Is there anything else, David, that you want to let people know?
One of the things, if you really are interested in housing and homelessness issues in your community, one of the things that we've done in the last year, and I'm going to kind of rep for the state right now, the state is, as you may have seen in some newspaper articles, in the last 2 years, the state of Arizona has put forth significant new money for housing and homelessness strategies. And again, those are statewide dollars. Those were not limited to urban areas or things like that. And so one of the things that we were able to do with these dollars in my department that we're really excited about is that we were able to put some resources into what we call local coalitions to end homelessness. Mm-hmm. We have them now in all 13 counties in Arizona, or in our balance of state jurisdiction. There is one in Apache Navajo that is coordinated by an organization called Sitgreaves. The contact information is on the ADOH website under local coalition contacts. If you need more help with that, you can call it. You can reach out to ADOH. But basically, what we're really trying to do is in each of those counties, we can't do it all from Phoenix, and we want to make sure that our solutions to homelessness and housing are locally focused and locally driven. And so these local coalitions are really where we're encouraging, local communities, faith-based partners, volunteers, elected officials, government entities, whoever it is in that community that's responding to homelessness. We'd like them to really connect and get involved through that process. Again, a good example is every year we do a pit count. We have to go out and count how many people are homeless in our jurisdictions. We have an area larger than the entire United Kingdom that we have to cover with volunteers. Through these local coalitions, we were able to recruit over 300 volunteers this year to go out and help us with those counts. And again, those counts inform our local homeless efforts. Those go up to Washington and inform our federal policy and our federal resource allocation. The newspaper gets a hold of them and uses that to kind of publicize issues around around homelessness and housing. And so, get involved. If you're interested at all in getting more involved, or you complete the survey and you're wondering how I connect and actually want to take my impact and maybe make a bigger impact and work with some other partners, those local coalitions are really where we ask people to plug in. And like I said, maybe after I can send you the contact information, and if you could add those to your website, for entities and agencies that want to get involved, we would love to have that participation.
You bet. We can do that as well. And very interesting comparison there, larger than the United Kingdom. That's yeah.
I think, Coconino and some of those rural counties, not only do we have the largest counties, other than I think San Bernardino in California, we have the largest counties in the United States, but, we have counties in Arizona that are larger than entire U.S. states.
Yeah.
And so, but we're required to do the same thing that these cities do in terms of, having this network, making sure that there's access to all the resources, making sure all these different groups are participating. So that's why it's so critical for us to get these local groups involved, because we don't have agencies that work across the state for the most part. Most of our solutions are very local in balance of state.
Awesome. Once again, David Bridge with the ADOH. Thank you very much for your time today, sir.
Thank you so much for giving us the avenue and the exposure. And like I said, anything we can follow up and help with, let us know. We want to support our balance of state communities. Thank you.
You bet. Once again, this is Rob Hefner with the town of Pinetop-Lakeside here for Talk of the Town. Remember, if you have any comments or you want to get back to us, the links are down below. And as always, we'll see you soon.